Hi guys, how are you? Episode 4 of Inside the Ring. We've got Coach Joel with us here today. Mate, how are you?
Good, mate. Good. Really good.
Yeah, good.
Thanks for having me on today.
No worries. So, yesterday was a really good show with Coach Kane, or Yoda as we like to call him. I think he's just on the way to your building now anyway, so that's all right. We'll just wait till he leaves.
Yeah, no, it was a really good talk yesterday. You guys, obviously covered a lot of what Kane went through, and he's a great bloke, and it's good to have him around.
Absolutely,
especially with me, I get to see him a little bit more. With help, coaching on the mats, and it's good.
I remember when you first came here. Of course, like Coach Kane was obviously very protective about the whole thing because of the way the situation was. And I remember you coming downstairs going, "Who's that guy?" Who's that guy on the mats?
It was interesting because obviously just trying to piece things together, coming into a new place, and he was like grandpa, sort of sitting there watching what everything's going on. But we gelled,
straight
really
away.
quick.
Absolutely,
so it was it was good, really good.
I think the important thing for him too is that his BJJ journey has been, I wouldn't say turbulent. Well, yeah, look, I probably would say turbulent. As you know, he's one of the most loyal blokes you've probably ever met in your life, and one of the kindest hearts that I've ever met. So when somebody comes to me and says, "Look, Kane, you can't trust him," I immediately think, yeah, I know I can't trust this person straight away. So he's let the cat out of the bag immediately. And and Kane was sort of put in a really awkward position. But the thing is even though he couldn't train jiu-jitsu here for that point in time, he was still here every day. He was still here regardless. Even though he wasn't training, he was just come here to support and still be part of the club. And his kids were still here. His kids were still, I think they were in the kickboxing or karate then still. And it wasn't until you came here that he kind of found someone that he could really connect with, not just as a coach but as a mentor. As you know, he doesn't trust people very, very easily. And he's got good reason, So for me, it was a great check, a great reality check on your credentials as a person. And like I was saying to Coach Kane yesterday, was I'd never even seen you coach a class. But just from a conversation that we had, I knew you were right fit for the place. Right fit for the crew. Which is that sort of element that we have here, I suppose. So,
Look, me coming in here was something a little bit different as well. So because obviously I've been coaching for a number of years, and I started coaching as a blue belt, which is really it's unheard of. A lot of people were against it to start off with, but I had a good mentor to start off with, which as you said, Kane had a sort of a tough sort of travel through his jiu-jitsu, and I had just as tough a travel as well. And I think that being through that, you see things and learn by those mistakes that other people have made, and you yourself grow as well. So it was difficult the first couple of weeks because of how it was all situated here, and me coming from a gym that I was co-owner in, just to sort of change my trajectory and which way I was going, and to come in and teach kids only, which was I've taught adults, kids throughout the whole journey, but just to go just only onto the kids program itself was very different, and I was looking forward to it because it was something different. I had to make sure that this side of the program was working, and would work into the future. So
it's funny though, because I measure a coach on their ability, as the same way you measure a parent on their ability to be able to communicate with their kids in the way that they teach their kids. And children are a product of their parents. And I don't look at the parents and think of them as anything. I look at the children and then that product is the product of the teaching.
Yeah.
So to see the kids pretty much instantly bond you straight away for me was heartwarming. And I remember saying to you, after I heard you teaching for the first time, I remember coming in, I was standing there with my arms crossed, and I'm thinking, this guy's been here watching my classes for 10 years, I guarantee it. Because you were using like the same terminology, the same methods really, the same teaching method, which I've been using in karate for a long time. And a lot of BJJ guys don't teach that way. But it provides structure and discipline and all the good foundations. But most BJJ guys don't do that. And I remember the BJJ coaches that we used to have would stand off in the corner and go tell the kids what to do. And once they've done their 5, they've got to sit there and wait until the last person in the class is finished. And rather than keep on drilling and rather than have everything structured. And I remember at one stage there were 3 coaches up there, and the group was maybe 12 kids. It was as high as it got to.
Yeah.
It was 12 kids, and they were complaining that the group was too big and it was too hard to handle, and and there I am. I got Roger downstairs and Jordan on a Friday night class with 40 or 50 kids in a class and one person in the room, complete control.
Yeah.
And then you see you with your classes. We've been watching him grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, we need a bigger BJJ space. And you're like, no, it's cool, don't worry, we can fit them all in. And I'm like, man, do you need some more help? No, I've got it, it's all good. And in the way that you had everything structured, you could at a glance see what everybody was doing. Everybody was lined up and moving together, learning from each other as well. So nothing was a mystery.
Yeah.
And the structure of it I found perfect. I mean, I've grown up in that same structure, and it makes learning so much easier.
Yeah.
I suppose when you first line up in class, as with full contact karate, the white belts are at the back and the higher ranks are at the front because you're looking forward to the future.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of systems will put the higher ranks in the front, in the back, and the white belts in the front. And that's an intimidating position for someone to be in, because you feel like you're being watched from the back and watched from the front, rather than having all the knowledge in front of you, everything's behind you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the BJJ, I mean, obviously you know a lot more about it than I do, but I guess it's all born out of the turbulence in BJJ today, which is, it's a touchy subject for many, obviously, but it's, one of those things that they kind of dance around.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think it's I've been around, many different academies and like, as you say, like the room size varies and all sorts of things. But regardless of room size or, who you have on the mats, I think it's important that, you stick to your structure and you try not to divert from there. I had the privilege of learning under some really good coaches. Suffice to say that things happened during that time and it didn't work out, or that sort of thing. It always happens, it's people change and evolve, and sometimes those changes don't fit in with everyone. But my coaching style, I attribute it to my first coach in Melbourne, Ben Hall. Younger guy, did things really differently, and he wasn't cut from that same mould where, this had to happen, then this had to happen. It was more sort of freelance type of training, and the way he explained things and explained the techniques, and the way he came across was fitting. I found fitting to everyone, regardless of what person or what belt was on the mat. And then I had a couple of other coaches, during the years as well. And I think it's important that you have a structure, but you can evolve that structure as well. You don't need to be stuck into that box. There's a few teams around Victoria and Australia that are you're only allowed to wear a white gi, you're only allowed to do this, you can't go and train here, you can't go and train there, they're our enemies and what have you. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's healthy. It's I've always said to the students that I teach, wherever you are in the world, take your gi. Because if you can go and train, at this place and at that place, and all you're doing is growing your knowledge, but the good thing about that is you bring it back to your family, and you let them in on the knowledge as well, and that's healthy. It's a healthy development. So I think that's really important. It's really important.
I suppose to being a centre here where we have multiple disciplines, not that it was groundbreaking, because there are other places that have done that before, but to have karate, BJJ, and kickboxing existing in the one space, it's not often done. And it was kind of funny to remember the very first coach that we had here. I don't know why, but he hated karate. I think, to be honest, I think he trained karate once and maybe got spanked, I'm not too sure. But he didn't really like it.
A bit jaded.
Yeah, it was just bizarre. So he walked in here with all the intention, everything's going to be great, everything's going to be good, bring BJJ to your club. And then literally as soon as he got here, you guys are the enemy. It's just like that mentality from another system was very, very foreign to me at that stage, because I'm sort of used to each club sort of works together and everybody helps each other, and and that's the environment that I've been exposed to a point. So then to have that was, I kind of thought, well, that's the norm, which of course led me down the path to our next coach, which we all know how that panned out. That's a conversation for another day. But then I guess what it did was it set us up for you to walk in the door, and it gave us a very, very deep appreciation, I suppose, of somebody who actually got what it is that we were doing here.
Yeah. Look, and for me that was a big reason why I did come here. I remember the first time I walked in the door and I met you and I met Fleur and I met Ruby, and I thought, wow, like the whole family's here. And then a couple of the other coaches came out and, they were friendly and there was I didn't feel one bit of standoffishness at all. And I only came in just to have a chat, and it felt like home straight away. And, that excited me because, as you can walk into certain places and feel an uncomfortableness or, especially when you've got, the different disciplines in the same room, it can feel a little bit, like, do you belong here? What part of it do you belong in? But to me, straight away, I just felt like everyone's a part of the club together. There wasn't the segregation, which is really weird, really weird. I haven't seen it anywhere else like that, because it's always been this is the BJJ team, this is the kickboxing team. I coached in a gym in Richmond, and they actually had segregated rooms where, the kickboxing guys would enter into the academy this side, and the jiu-jitsu guys would enter and leave the academy on the other side. Like, hang on, and no one would ever cross paths.
No one would talk.
You'd go and get a drink or something in the communal sort of, change room, and there'd be no eyes down, or a jiu-jitsu guy would be putting on his gi, and the kickboxer guy would have his back turned, and there was it felt that real sort of stale, you stay your side, I'll stay my side type of situation. And suffice to say, that club didn't survive very long. Or they decided to go just on the kickboxing side and decided to shuffle out the jiu-jitsu side a fair bit. But it's interesting, and as I said, coming here, it wasn't that feeling at all. And I remember getting out of the car thinking, oh no, is this going to be another one like that? What do I do in case, But it didn't feel like that at all. And I left here thinking, wow, I gotta be there. I have to be there.
It was funny too when I first met you. It was there was something about you. I think we both gave off that that Sydney kind of vibe.
Yeah.
I grew up in Western Sydney. You grew up in
Maroubra.
in Maroubra. Completely different areas, really, of Sydney. I was out the Parramatta side, and of course you're in the city side. But the I suppose the culture
Yeah.
in up there in the lower to middle class, which is where we both grew up,
Yeah.
is very, very different to what it is here in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah, it's it's a different feel. You know, I've lived in all 3 states on the east coast, and you know, New South Wales is totally different to the other 2.
Oh yeah.
It's you know, just and
No offence to any of the clubs in Sydney.
you know, and getting back, like that's where I started
Yeah.
my martial arts as well. You know, I started in judo. Judo was pretty big for me, but I hadn't put my whole time into it. It was just go a couple of times a week, or then I'd be out surfing that afternoon. I wouldn't go to training, or and then working as well. So
But your coach then, I remember a story you were telling me not long ago. Your coach then, he was teaching you a few other skills as well, wasn't he?
yeah, he was a boxer. He was a really good boxer. So we would do, it would be boxing or it would be judo, and he did have a fair bit of Muay Thai as well. So we got to cross, sort of into a few different. But it wouldn't be a case of there would be judo over here that night and kickboxing. If you're in there, it's judo night.
Yeah.
So everyone's doing it, regardless. So if it was, you'd walk in and the boxing gloves are out. Okay, I guess we're doing boxing tonight. So, and that was good because it was a way to obviously get fit and stay healthy and be able to protect yourself, because where I grew up that was pretty important to be able to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
So but and that was, again, it wasn't the same dynamics, as I said, where you got different styles being taught simultaneously in the one building in different areas. It was like there was only one mat space, there was a few bags lined up, and that was pretty much it,
Yeah.
So but I enjoyed it. It was good. Look, Sydney's a bit of a different, and even like the jiu-jitsu in Sydney is totally different to the jiu-jitsu in Melbourne. They're very, from what I found, they're very segregated. Like you train at Gracie Humacha, that's where you train. There's not much cross training going on there.
Yeah.
It might have changed, since I've been away from there, but it was because a lot of the coaches were Brazilian, so they had that Brazilian style of.
Yeah, exactly right. I know. Yeah, it's sort of funny too. I mean, when you talk about the difference between Brazilian coaches and Aussie coaches, and I suppose when you've come direct from Brazil, obviously, you bring that energy with you, and it's one of those things that it's not something perhaps intentionally done. It's just when you grow up a certain way, you teach us a certain way. I mean, I know that when I first started teaching karate, I was very hard and fast, and it took a long time to sort of soften up a little bit to be able to get the real message across. But I was known for being ruthlessly hard.
Why does that not surprise me?
So I guess, and it's kind of funny with jiu-jitsu as well, being, I suppose, the newer of the martial arts, and I sort of said this a little while ago to somebody, was in the grand scheme of things, I suppose, the growth and the learning that even I've seen in the last decade in jiu-jitsu, as far as coming back to your roots of Budo, has grown exponentially by those who want to.
Yeah.
And it was kind of made really, really evident when Kane had the situation here where he wasn't, didn't get along with the coaching staff here. He started to go out in the world and explore things, and was going to other gyms, and all of a sudden found a completely new culture where it was doors are open. What's your experience? Oh yeah, cool. We can teach you this and that. And then where are you going to train tomorrow? There's another gym over the other side of town. He's a great guy. why don't you go over there? He knows something that I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and he does something better than I do, so go over there and learn that. And then all of a sudden, I realised that BJJ wasn't stagnant anymore. It was growing, and people were making an effort to make something of it, and to make it adaptable to the Western culture.
Yeah.
I suppose, and especially to Australians, because we tend to learn things a lot differently. We're a little bit more open, and I guess we expect a little bit more than just a regimented. We need to like our instructors. We need to have respect for them.
Yeah.
You know, and not respect built through fear or respect through anything else. Respect earned by respect given. And I suppose that's the difference between teachers who do well here, i.e. you and me. We give it before we get respect.
Yeah.
Whereas other teachers will demand it.
Yeah.
Demand loyalty, demand this, demand that. And it's almost like written on a contract, and write it down on something and plaster it on you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. You know, when I started jiu-jitsu, I think, when was it, 2013, was when I actually put everything into it. And when I say put everything, I was living in Balnarring, and the academy that I trained at, that I was told that this is probably going to be the best place for you, was Carlson Gracie Academy in Pran. So I was travelling 6 days a week from Balnarring to Pran, you know, and that was, and everyone was like, "You're crazy."
You're well known for racking up a few Ks for training.
But to me, it was, you know, I checked out a few, because I came from Gracie Mitra in Sydney. I was training there a little bit, and my brother's a purple belt up there. And I spoke to Bruno and said, you know, what do you think would be the best place to train in Melbourne? Because I was moving to Melbourne. And being a Brazilian, I expected he'd say a Brazilian guy, but he didn't. He did the whole, just took me totally off guard and said, go to this guy. This guy would fit you perfectly. And Ben Hall's an Australian boy. I think he's actually English, but he's an Aussie.
Yeah.
And I sat out the front. I sat out the front because there's a little street, back street in Pran. And I sat out the front for 20 minutes trying to get the courage to go in, because all you could see was like this big bulldog on the front.
Yeah, I know his logo, yeah.
You know, it was a pretty intimidating, because there was like one window and it was all fogged up and I could see everyone was just going nuts in there. I'm like, whoa, and you could hear the noise coming from there. And I thought, no, I'll go in, and I went in, and Ben didn't really give me the time of day, because obviously he was teaching class or whatever. He didn't really notice me. But a couple of the other guys did, a couple of the high belts, and they sort of came over and said, "Oh, g'day, how you going?" and introduced themselves. And I said, "Oh, look, you know, I'm just going to sit and watch a class." And they're like, no, don't do that. You know, you've been training a little bit, so you know a little bit about it. Grab a gi, and they grabbed me just a jacket, and I jumped on the mat, and like I think within 5 minutes, you know, again I was like, wow, you know, these guys are cool. And they were a team notorious around the world. I learnt very quickly that the Carlson Gracie team were notorious for being absolutely brutal. Like, to the point where, you know, in competitions we were told that we weren't allowed to put our crossface on. We weren't allowed to put our side control on as heavy as we do, because people were tapping to side control, which, you know, as you know, is just a transitional position. It's not a submission. Yeah. But because we were, you know, you would.
Sorry, who was telling you not to put these positions on?
Oh, yeah. So
hang on a sec. Where's the can opener?
Yeah. I could just hear the pop. So the main entity in Australia is the AFBJJ, which is the Australian Federation of Jiu-Jitsu, and that is run by a dictator solely.
Like the dictator.
Dictator. It's supposed to be a federation, but it's not a federation.
Nah.
You know, and run by one person that's probably got, or did have, the biggest club in Australia. And mind you, he was one of the first jiu-jitsu guys in Australia. Him, along with John Will, and a few other guys, were pretty much the first handful that brought it into Australia. And he had the monopoly on all of the competitions. So, there'd be competitions all around Australia, but they'd all be AFBJJ comps. And I think I was training for probably 3 months, 4 months, and Ben's like, dude, we need a big guy, because I was really big back then too. We need a big guy to jump in and compete for us. I'm like, oh, all right, let's go. And then, the first competition, I think, Peter DeBean came up to my coach and said, look, you guys are out of control. You use your head with everything to squeeze people's faces into the ground. You cross-face people. People are, complaining that they've got dislocated jaws and what have you. And my coach is just like, you serious? Like, this is just the way we roll. Yeah. So, and we weren't being nasty about it. It was just the way the Carlson Gracie team were. They were ruthless. And Carlson Gracie Senior was known for having that style.
Was that a case of like when you first went in there? Because I know that a lot of the stuff that we do here in Sharon Kempo, it can be seen as sort of fairly brutal, but it's a gradual sort of process. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Were you thrown in at step 6? Or?
No, I think it's a funny situation because, as I said, like the first night, I sat out the front of this place and I saw what was going on inside, and I thought to myself, wow, these guys are full on. Yeah. But actually being on the mat with them, you're included in the process straight away. Like if you were putting pressure on with an elbow or something, they'd talk you through it, like the more pressure you put on here, the more they're going to start to squirm, the more they're going to be uncomfortable. So it was sort of the first few months was trial by fire. Like I got myself into some pretty hairy situations that I thought I was going to get hurt in. Yeah. But it was all calculated.
But that's all ego-driven too. One tap
100%.
and that's it.
100%.
And you're out of it.
Yeah.
My BJJ journey has been sort of quite turbulent as well. And if I didn't know, or if I'd missed that class where when you take hooks, you don't cross your feet, I wasn't there for that class. So the way that was considered was, well, it's bad luck for you. I'm going to cross my legs over and break your ankle.
From the back.
Yeah, which is exactly what happened. And all of a sudden I'm screaming in pain, and this guy's going, oh, what the hell did I just do? And then, of course, the coach is saying, well, you didn't know, so stiff shit. Yeah. But the way that I see it is, and the way that you coach as well, is I can see you down there watching every single thing that happens and saying, okay, if you continue to do this, this is what's going to happen. So the choice is yours. Or perhaps that person doesn't know that, so don't do that. And then, so those situations were avoided. And then if somebody makes a repeat mistake, well, you can't help that. They've been taught, they've been made aware. Yeah. But that style of coaching, just to allow someone to get physically hurt just because they missed a class. Yeah.
That's funny you say that too, because I actually had the exact same thing happen to me.
Yeah, really?
Like I'm talking the exact same thing. As you were saying, I'm thinking, oh my God. So I've got a really good mate, Dita Lorraine. He's a Carlson Gracie black belt. And we were pretty much both white belts. I think he had a few more stripes than me. And he was a big guy as well. Short but stocky, quick over short distances. And I took his back. And it's something I'd never been told as well. And I crossed my feet straight away. And straight away, he just, boom, over the top of my foot. And me I'd already trained there a couple of months. So in my head, it was already, just you go hard, you go hard, you go hard, you go hard. You try not to tap, you hold out as long as possible. But in the end, if you get in that position, you have to tap, obviously. But because there was a whole group of young blokes there, the ego was just off the scale. And I held it there, and I'm like, my feet were like just about there. You could hear the pops and everything. And he actually let it go because he realised that I had no idea that my feet were about to be broken.
Even a white belt knew that.
Yeah, even a white belt, and that was the restraint that. Okay, those guys trained hard, but there was still a restraint there that they knew if someone didn't know something, they would at least give them the opportunity to either tap or see it out. the consequences were the consequences. But and then he took me aside and he was another white belt. Took me aside for 10 minutes and explained to me the do's and don'ts of the back. And even to this day, I'm like, as soon as I see a student cross their feet, I just tap their feet and go, oh no, remember, you just don't use your hooks, don't cross your feet.
See, I could have done with you about 7 or 8 years ago.
But so back to the competition side of it, it was we formed. I was actually like a little bit older as well too, so a lot of these guys were early 20s, where I was already mid 20s, starting to get into the later 20s, and after that first competition, they'd been competing a little bit, but there wasn't as many competitions back then too. There was sort of 4 a year, so you knew which ones were coming up, and then if you travelled interstate and whatever, you'd get probably 7 or 8. Yep. It's not like before the current dramas, there'd be a competition every weekend almost. But it was we hit that first competition, and then we just formed a competition team just off that. Just off someone coming to our coach, and it was really, really weird situation too. It was something off a movie, in that the Karate Kid, how those guys, they'd be all in their bandanas and their coach would be in the middle, and they're all like here, and they're all just standing behind the coach, and the coach is sticking strong.
Cobra Kai.
That's it, Cobra Kai. And at MSAC,
I might have seen the movie once or twice.
At MSAC, it's got like a stadium type seating.
Yeah,
and we'd all be in our Carlson Gracie t-shirts, and half of them have got Carlson Gracie tattoos and all that sort of stuff. And Ben would be sitting in the middle, and we'd all sort of be around him. And as people are coming back from the mats and what have you, and I remember Peter Bean coming over to Ben and saying, "Look, man, this is just, what are you guys doing? You're hurting people. This is crazy." And Ben's like, "What? What? This is jiu-jitsu. It's not ballet. Yeah. If people have had enough,
they tap. Exactly right. Can't take it, tap. It's as simple as that. It's a competition.
That's right.
It's like telling my fighters, don't kick so hard to the head.
Yeah, and it was my first comp, so I was like, whoa, I didn't really understand it. I just sort of sat back, and I remember seeing the higher belts. They're like, man, this is BS, and these guys are just jokers and whatever. But it was, and then we had like a couple of other coaches from different teams coming over and putting their 5 cents worth in, and I thought Ben was just going to go, right, pack it up, let's get out of here. He's like, no. You want to see jiu-jitsu? You want to see hard jiu-jitsu? Let's go. So we weren't told to put it on harder and heavier, but the higher belts were told to don't back down.
Don't back down, yeah.
So it was, but it was like out of a movie, I'm like, and I remember saying to Ben a couple of weeks after that, I'm like, dude, does that always happen at comps? He's like, no, we're not real like the competition, because we're there to win, we're there to compete, we're not there to mess around.
Yeah.
So
I know that feeling well, because every time we take our team to a comp, all of a sudden we go to the rules briefing and they've changed all the rules. Oh, we can't do this now. We can't do that. All right, no worries. Sure, let's adapt.
Yeah. And it got to the point with us, because we formed that competition team, and it was a solid competition team, and it wasn't a case of you guys that haven't competed aren't a part of the competition team. If you wanted to compete, you were brought in straight away, and it was just right. This is the way we go about it. And everyone, regardless of who was on the mat, if it was competition training, everyone would do competition training, whether you competed or you didn't. That was just there's no other way. So what we'd find is after that when they do all the draws for the matches, you've got your name, and then you've got your team name underneath. And it was just interesting. Maybe it was just the way it all worked out. But, we would have, if there was a bye or if there was something, the bracket would never work to our favour.
Yeah.
Where we would have 3 or 4 more fights in that division.
Wasn't exactly computer generated.
No. Just pull this one here, switch that one there. Which was fine by us, because, for me straight away, I wanted to get in there and I wanted to fight everyone. I didn't care, and because I was probably 140, 145 kilos then.
Wow.
So big, had heaps of weight, and I wasn't any taller. So it'd be sort of comical, I remember going up to Sydney and I'd rock up to the competition, and because I had mates at Gracie and Mitre, they're like, "Oh, Joey, how's it going, mate?" And just, have a bit of a talk, and then all the fights would start, and then you see these huge, big guys putting like big Tongans and big Maoris and that, putting on their gear, and they got a white belt. I'm like, "Oh, he's going to be stepping on the mat with me, I bet you." And there was like this 6'8" Samoan guy. He was just a monster, absolute monster. And my brother's like, "That's your guy straight away, I reckon." I'm like, "Oh, you reckon?" Sure enough, he called my name, called his name, and I'm like, I remember tapping hands, and I actually looked up at him. I'm like, "Oh, this one's
Did you
gonna
tap
be
hands
interesting."
and you only made contact with one of his fingers?
Like it was ridiculous. It just looked comical. It looked like a little boy versus a grown man.
Yeah.
But I got the win. I ended up fighting really well that day and took out the whole division, and it was good, competition was. I loved it. I loved competing. Our competition team would fly to South Australia. We'd fly to WA. We'd all the state titles. It would just be, and you knew we were coming too because we had all the Carlos and Gracie stuff. We all stuck as a team, our coach didn't necessarily come to competitions with us, but there would always be
A senior member.
And funnily enough, the senior member was Dieter, the guy the other white belt. Right. So he was a white belt. He was actually a black belt in judo too. So he was, he was pretty versed.
Yeah, he certainly had the credentials.
Oh yeah. But he was like he was just the one that we all looked up to, competing because he had that competition experience in judo.
Yeah.
So and he was just a great bloke. Well, he's a great bloke, really good bloke. But yeah, competitions was fun, and then obviously saying that, it wasn't the first year of competition was pretty difficult. I just got my butt handed to me just time after time after time after time.
But you need that in the start.
Yeah.
You do. You need that. I've had fighters that, like young Robbie, when he first started competition, he never won anything. And he had this really awkward style about him. And I remember my teacher back then was telling me, "You've got to get him to change what he's doing." And I said, "No, I don't want to. That's his natural movement. I don't want to alter that. It just doesn't fit right now." It was like a kid clomping around in these giant shoes, and his movement didn't make any sense. I remember his old man, who's now one of my instructors, holding pads for him. And I remember sort of sitting there thinking, he'd actually be all right as a pad man. Anyway, but he just lost and lost. And I remember the first day he won was the day that I decided, stuff it, I'll get in there and I'll fight in their top division as well. And I jumped straight in there, of course, demolished everybody. And then that just lifted the whole team. Yeah. And he got his first win that day.
Yeah, nice.
And to be honest, I don't think he's, in Australia, he's never lost since. And the only people that he's lost to now are the very best in the world.
Yeah.
Like the Japanese A team, the Iranian A team, they're the only ones that he's lost to now.
Yeah, that's unreal. It's funny because because of the camaraderie that we had in that team, regardless of losses, the team would just pick you up straight away.
Yeah. And
you just put that one aside. We had this ritual that after every competition we all went out and we all had dinner together and we all talked about the day and then we put it away. We don't bring it up again. Yeah. And all the medals, any medals you won, you put those away. They don't come out at the academy where you show everyone. They will just put away. That's in the past. We move to the next one. And it was really funny because it wasn't run that way by Ben. He just let it evolve. Yeah. And it just turned into this. It's funny though.
It's funny you say that he didn't let that happen, but he kind of did because that's his personality. Yeah. And all leadership stems from the top, and like attracts like. So here's you guys and a bunch of other guys that are all loyal to each other and all backing each other up. It came from him.
Yeah.
And the sign of a really good coach, a really, really good one, is then it becomes autonomous.
Yeah.
And like for me, I don't have to educate the white belt when he walks in the door because my yellow belt does.
Yeah.
And then the orange belt will educate the yellow belt and so on and so forth. I see the same thing with your students now.
Yeah.
I see some of your yellow belts and grey belts will walk around here and they'll give tips to the new guys that are here before you step on the mats, make sure you do this and pat on the back, and and that's the sign of a great coach.
Yeah.
You don't have to micromanage everything because you trust everybody else under you and they all trust you. And you can sort of let go of a little bit of, there's no power or no ego involved with it at all. And I guess that's why you belong here.
Yeah. I'm actually amazed by that. I've always noticed that as a coach, and it's one of the things that actually drives me as a coach is obviously, like everyone as a coach, watching the growth of each student.
Yep.
And it's nothing is more fulfilling as a coach than when you see your students passing on to the next person down the line.
Yep.
And even to a point where someone above them, they have that mutual respect as well.
Yep.
So, and I try and really nurture that here, because obviously I did come in just teaching the kids. It was a good opportunity to start at the ground level and build that way. Like the Bradley boys, Aiden is a leader, in the whole group. We've got Jess, he's now, help coaching. He's becoming
His story was a funny one too, wasn't it? Because he was so meek and mild and very easily intimidated. But there was something about that kid. I saw it as soon as he walked in. And I remember it was under the old coaches that we had, he was pretty much driven out. And I didn't understand why. I just took the coach's advice at the time that, that he didn't belong. Okay. And it wasn't until a few years later that, and I think it was, I forget how long it was, but pretty much as soon as that coach left and you came in, he was back. And I think his mum had heard that the coaching staff had changed. He loved jiu-jitsu. He fell in love with it, as we all do with martial arts. And it's that yearning, that calling that you have for it, that, regardless of whether you had a bad teacher or not, you still want that path in your life.
Yeah.
And as soon as he met you, and I remember when he came back, and I didn't say anything to you about any history or anything else, just let him go into the class and come back out. And I remember you came to me straight after class and goes, man, that kid, we've got to change his gi, but he's good. He's really good.
It wasn't, his jiu-jitsu wasn't, but the way he went about, as you said, I didn't know his story. I just saw this, tall kid, great hair, walk in on the mat. And as soon as he walked on the mat, obviously he had a little bit of a higher belt on as well because he kept the belt that he had. Walked on the mat, made a beeline straight for the coaches, shook hands, looked me in the eye, introduced himself, and the first thing he said was, "I'm so happy to be back on the mats." I'm like, "Wow, that's cool, mate. Get over there and start warming up."
So I remember when his mum called me and she said, "Look, he really wants to come back, but can you promise me that the coach is different?" I said, I can promise you the coach is different. And there were those little mini tests that, everything's a lesson. I do this to my students all the time. I set them up with certain things and watch how they respond to it, and can they pick up on situations. And quite often I get a coach who comes up to me, or a teacher, one of my teachers comes up and says, I've got this kid who's really, really naughty. And I'll say, well, actually there's something you need to know about that person, which I was hoping you would have seen, but you didn't. There's never been that moment with you. You've always been able to see what it is that I see in a student and understand that people are the way they are for a reason.
Yeah.
And there's more to it. There's more to it. And we've got a group of kids who were in the old class who were considered disobedient, and not with the program. but couldn't get pushed out the door because their mum sort of refused. No, you're learning martial arts, and if you don't do karate, if you don't do jiu-jitsu, then you're going to go and do karate, or you're going to do kickboxing, but you're staying here.
Yeah.
You know, and then you came in, saw these kids, and came out and said, "Look, they've got this issue, this issue, this issue, but I can sort it." And now they're your strongest group.
Yeah.
They really are.
Look, it's another thing that I noticed, you know, especially with kids, you 9 times out of 10, because the parent has brought the child in, there's been a problem.
Yeah.
You know, there's been a problem, whether it's been...
There's always a reason why.
There's always a reason.
There's always a reason why for martial arts. You sought martial arts in your life because, exactly the same as me, you knew that you needed guidance. I knew that I needed guidance as a young man, an appalling upbringing, and I searched for it because I knew that I needed it.
Yeah.
And you're exactly the same.
Yeah.
And parents who bring their kids in, there's a reason why they bring them in. It's not because, they're bored with footy and just thought they'd give it a go. You don't just walk into a martial arts school for no reason.
Yeah.
There's something, we're all fighters by nature. You know, we're bred to fight since the day we were created, the day we were evolved, even before that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's in us.
When I started coaching, it was in Richmond as a blue belt, and I was coaching adults. I wasn't coaching any kids at all. They didn't have kids classes. But I had my own daughters, so I'd teach them how to choke people, and this big. But then when I went to another academy that wanted me to coach there, again, not knowing me, but they had to change the situation they were in. And funnily enough,
it's the same person.
Situated around the same person. So
seems to be a pattern of
it's a very weird pattern. It's over the last 10 years, it's a really weird circle of how it's all worked. But they said, we've got kids classes. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, all right, no worries. And I remember I specifically remember this, and I've carried it from that day forward. I know why kids are being brought into the gym and why they've been brought into martial arts. It's not up to me to fix that problem. It's up to me to give them the confidence for them to be able to work out who they are as an individual.
Well said.
You know, not for what's happened to them, for what's being done to them. Give them the tools to be able to recognise, be confident, and work out who they are as a person. I've lost count the amount of kids and parents that, you know, the parent brings the child into the academy and they make a beeline for me straight away, and they say, right, my kid's got this. I say, hey, hang on, what is your child's name? They tell me the child's name. I shake their hands or high fives. Straight away, they are now part of the crew and they're part of the learning part. I don't need to know all of the details that have brought them to this point.
Yeah.
The main thing for me is they've made the decision to be here. Now start giving them the tools to be able to work. And I know kids that have come in, did not say a word. You know, all they wanted to do was run out the door. Within 3 months, 4 months, some take a little bit longer.
Different kids, yeah.
They're the most outspoken. Their schoolwork is just through the roof. Everything in their life is starting to really work because they've been given the confidence to be themselves, to find out who they are. And jiu-jitsu, well, obviously I do mainly jiu-jitsu, so jiu-jitsu for me enables the person to know where they are, to know who they are, because you get yourself in pretty tight situations against, you know, different people, man, woman, girl, boy.
You get to understand your fight or flight response pretty quickly and how to control yourself under pressure.
Yeah, and you can't get away. And you can't get away, you know, because you're stuck there. You've got, you know, the mount or the back, and, you know, you're in a pretty precarious situation. But, you know, getting back to those kids, as I said, from that day that I started teaching kids, I said to myself, I will not judge any of those students that are coming in for what's happening to them or what's happened. I want to see how they react to their life moving forward. And even to this day, we've got another kid come in. I don't go and ask the parent anything, you know. I get them on the mats, and as you said before, it's the group that actually sucks them into the whole process. It's not me. Yeah. I just let them sort of merge and become, you know, confident on the mat and just let them express themselves, you know. And you've got, like, obviously with the kids, you've got, you know, and the adults are the same. I think everyone learns differently. I don't care if I've got twin daughters. Both of them are totally different. The way they learn, the way they take information in, the way they react to certain situations. Every single person's different. And that's the way I see it on the mats. You know, every single person is like a fingerprint.
It's funny, the smarter coaches too. I mean, you know that there's a few different ways in which people will absorb knowledge. They'll either be able to see it, they need to hear it, or they need to feel it, you know. And the smart coach knows the combination of which learning modalities that particular person needs, or the intensity of each one, or when to back off. Yeah. And I think one of the gifts that you've got is you know when to push, but you know when to back off. Yeah. And I've seen that a number of times where you've just sort of backed it right back, and let's just dial it back. And you understand that about people. And whether it's somebody this big or an adult, they're treated the same way. Yeah. And they're taught the same way. And I've said this too, I think I was saying this to Kane yesterday, that the sign of a good coach is a coach that can teach children. And the younger that they can teach, the better. Any person who expects that they've been teaching adults and that's all they've done can go and teach kids, it's not going to happen.
You get eaten up pretty quick.
Eaten up really, really quick. And you've been put in that position where you're only taught adults for a while, and all of a sudden you're teaching kids, and you've just gone, whoa, this is a pretty big responsibility. And I see many, many coaches who don't see that responsibility, and they don't wear that burden enough. Yeah. And I see it as a burden. Like every time I tighten my belt and I see those Dans on there, it's a responsibility that I have to hold up to that standard. Yeah. And especially when you're teaching, it's not only is it a privilege for us, but it's a burden. And we have to take that very, very seriously. I've been taught by some pretty foolish people over the years who didn't respect that. Yeah. And you quickly lose respect for that person, you know, not understanding that the power that you hold in your hand, it's exactly the same as I said to my hip surgeon, because he knows me very, very well, and he knows my story, he knows all the things that I've done. He's helped in surgeries for a couple of my patients, my students that have been through some quite traumatic experiences, and I've helped them a lot. So he knows a lot about me, and I remember him saying to me, "Oh, you're just amazing at what you do. I listen to everything that you do. Have you got any advice for me?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I do actually." I said, "I look up to you the same way you do to me." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're a master of your craft. Yeah. You know, you're a god in somebody's eyes. Yeah. You know, and that's a responsibility that you've got to take seriously." Yeah. And then I sort of take that further into every single student that I have and say, well, it doesn't matter who you are, there's somebody smaller than you are, somebody younger than you are, or a lower demographic than you are, or poorer than you are, or whatever the situation is, that looks up and wants to be just like you. Yeah. And you may not be aware of it, but it's true, there is somebody. And the moment that I told that to my daughter came home from school one day thinking that, you know, she wasn't much of a person and didn't have, you know, her self-esteem was low, because nobody at school could understand the calibre of what she does here. Yeah. And she never took that to school or tried to use that in any way. And as soon as I put that on her, I said, "You realise that there's probably somebody who looks up to you and wants to be just like you?" She went, "Really? Like me?" Yeah. And the thing is what I knew was there was a couple of kids here who come up to me all the time. "Where's Ruby? Where's Ruby?" You know, I wish I could be just like her. Yeah. Excuse me. She didn't know that. And as soon as I pointed that out to her, it just went, like, you could see the light bulb.
Yeah, click.
You know, you get that.
I think it's important because, you know, as I said before, like everyone learns differently, and everyone's train of thought is different. I try and I've got a funny way of teaching, and I've had a few people, mostly adults, tell me that it's when you're teaching, it's like you're just teaching me, like by myself. There's no one else here, but there's like a room full of people.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Yeah. And it's just, maybe it's just something that it just happens. I can't pinpoint it, but it's from the coaches that taught me, and I've had great people that have shown me, taught me jiu-jitsu, and great people, that taught me many things that I also use, in jiu-jitsu and outside of martial arts.
Do you remember how special it was being a student when your coach would use you as an example?
Oh.
Do you remember that lift, that massive?
There was nothing like it.
I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Like I heard my teacher just do, he's just driving along doing a quick Facebook post and blah blah blah. But especially about the online stuff, how we've just sort of switched automatically and rolled with the times and adapted to everything. And he's like, I just want to give a big shout out to Matthew Charles over there in Australia. And I thought, out of the thousands of people in his organisation, he says that about me.
Yeah.
And I've just, wow.
Yeah, goosebumps, and it's
and when we do that to every one of our students, and you do that too, there's never an elite group. No. Well, there is, but there's not.
To a certain point.
They're elite in their ability, but not in their social standing in the club. Yeah. Especially on the mat, because we're all equal, regardless of the belt that you wear. We all treat each other like human beings. Yeah. And when you teach, I can see you make eye contact with every single person that's on the floor. And your class isn't complete until you've reached everybody in some way.
Yeah.
And that's the personalisation. And that's why it feels like you give all your attention to somebody, because all they need is that one moment in the class, and they feel like that class was tailored for them.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and that's, again, that power that you have as a coach or a teacher or a doctor or whatever leader that you are in your community, and whether you want to accept that responsibility or not, but you're able to hold that power very, very well, and you respect it. Yeah,
I think it's really important. I think I've come to you a couple of times after class. Not come to you, but we sort of have a bit of a chat before I take off, and.
Quite often late home for dinner.
Sorry,
Amelia.
and I'll say to you, it was a little bit off. It was a little bit off that class. I didn't, because of that reason. I don't think I got to
through
everyone,
to somebody.
And it really tears me up. Like really tears me up. And I try and be better every day. As we do as humans, but.
Heavy is the burden of the black belt.
It's unless you've been in that situation, it's hard to explain that situation. You can't just explain that situation to anyone. And you always get it, and I think now it's you can even see it before I even say it.
I see it straight away.
and sometimes we don't even have to say it like that.
It's funny if I see you walk out of the room in a certain way, I think, I better send him a text later.
It's because I feel, every single class, like you said before, for me, the way I teach is, not necessarily the juniors, you can't teach the same way, but my expectations of the senior kids to the teens to the adults should all be able to learn the exact same thing I'm teaching. So I don't think that I need to change the classes for every single age group, because why can't I teach what I'm teaching the adults to the kids? Because if I do change that, all I'm doing is taking away from their knowledge. And the way you change the way you go about it, but essentially you should be able to teach like an armbar to every single class. The adults are probably going to get it a little bit differently. Some of them don't even think they know everything, and they're like, I know how to do this, and they're probably missing 4 or 5 steps to it, where the kids will slow it down a little bit. They're sponging it, you know. They're trying to take as much of it in as possible. But I don't see any reason why you have to water things down for some students, you know. They might not get it the first time. They might not get it the second or the third time. But again, it comes back to the people that are on the mat, you know, coming in and giving them, you know, the tips and the pointers and, you know, what they might not be doing right or wrong. And I think that's really important, you know. And it just goes to show that, you know, I've taught a lot of really talented kids, you know, kids that have won world titles. These are kids winning world titles, going over to America and fighting the best in America and what have you over the years.
And the funny thing is, you were doing all this at what grade were you at that stage? You were a purple belt. Yeah, you were a purple belt teaching kids. You know, and really it comes down to the coach and your ability to communicate. It's got nothing to do with how many Dan bars you've got or how many degrees you've got in your belt or even the colour of your belt, really.
Yeah.
You know, you were born to be a teacher.
There was, I can't remember what it was. I looked at it years ago, but someone throughout the world made up this Rate My Coach. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
No.
It's a jiu-jitsu thing. I haven't looked at it for years.
Of course it's a jiu-jitsu thing.
It's a jiu-jitsu thing, yeah. So it's Rate My Coach, yeah. And I think there was, the last time I saw, there was like 7,500 coaches on this Rate My Coach, and it's throughout the whole world.
Is that an app?
No, you can actually search for it, Rate My Coach, and it's
Rate My Coach.
Yeah, Rate My Coach. And it's so,
I might look up a few people.
Oh, it's so funny. It's hilarious because and you can go by country, you know, like I can look at who the number one. Now the rankings are given by the students or the members of the club. Yeah. Okay, and you can't go on there and
do it twice.
You can't go on there and do it twice.
Yeah.
But you also can't diss the person either. You either rate the person or you don't rate the person.
Yeah.
You know, there's no hatred in it.
Yeah.
And you see find out some interesting things. So for me, I didn't know about it until one of my students sent me the link to it. I'm like, what's this? Anyway, I opened it up and then I saw that you could see by country. So I opened up Australia and I'm like, whoa, okay. So you've got, you know, the likes of John Will, all these high class black belts, Bruno Pano, and then you've got a purple belt in amongst all of these black belts. I'm like, what? No way. And like I'd actually had quite a few good ratings, and I'm like, it didn't go to my head. I'm just thinking like, wow, how weird is that for someone to look at it and go, black belt, 4 stripes, black belt, black belt, black belt, black belt, black belt, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes back to black belts.
Yeah.
And like this massive long list, and then like there's a heap of purple belt, brown belts, purple belts, blue belts. But having this one purple belt, you know, in amongst all of these black belts that I look up to, was just, very
It's funny too, because your journey to black belt was a long, long one. So was mine. But it's funny, like I've said quite often too, is that you aspire to be the rank that you want to be, and you become that rank long before you wear the belt, long before you wear it. You become that rank. And that comes through doing if you see what a black belt does, you do what a black belt does. Well, a black belt does 20 push-ups instead of 10, and then you do 20.
Yeah.
And I always took that on. I always took on the challenges, the highest challenges. It took me a long time to start becoming successful at it, but I still took the challenge every time.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing with my fighting career. Very, very late start in my professional karate fighting career. But I thought, I'm going to do what the best in the world do. And if the best in the world are training this way, that's what I'm going to do. And I did. And I managed to get to that level quite fast, which was really, really surprising. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. So you became a black belt here long time before you ever tied that belt on. And I think when you came here, your first class here was one of the very first classes that you taught as a black belt.
Yeah. I actually think it was.
Really?
Because when I received my black belt the day before I went over to Vietnam for the first time.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was waiting for you to get back from Vietnam, so
yeah.
you come here to have the meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So for me, black belt was new, like extremely new.
Yeah.
So it was, it was, and it still is interesting day to day. My journey to my black belt was, it was interesting and disappointing.
But you've got to have that too, don't you?
100%. So, and what I mean by that was the interesting part was I saw a lot of things. I saw a lot of things on do's and don'ts. And the disappointing part was, I'm a very loyal person. And loyal to the point where
It's a strength and a weakness.
Yeah. Like I got $5 in my wallet. If you need $5, it's yours. That type of situation. It doesn't. It's a difficult one. So I went to Ben's and was with Ben for 4 years, nearly 5 years. Got to blue belt there. Worked hard. Like as I said, I was traveling. I think I was doing. I averaged out. This is crazy. I averaged it out. I was doing about 740 k's a week to training.
Wow.
A week, and I would never miss. The only time I would ever miss a session was if my wife. We only have really small kids. My wife was unreal. I can't believe she put up with that for that long. But it was
They either become widows.
Yeah. But it was
or divorcees.
Yeah. But for me, it was really, really important. Because I was becoming, even though I was one of the lower ranked belts, I had a big voice, and I wasn't afraid to just jump in. Like we're to the point, and I think this is where I learned my perseverance from. Now that's a totally another story. But it was so that was like 4 years, 5 years there, and as I said before, people change. The person you meet now might not be the same person in 5 years' time, because things happen, devastation, a lot of things happen to a person. So I started to see things in that coach that wasn't directed at me. It was directed at very, very good friends around me, and I didn't think it was honourable. I didn't think it was the right thing to do. And out of everyone, going back to what I said before, I was the outspoken one. I never failed to tell anyone what I thought, and it gets me in trouble even to this day. But I didn't do the disrespectful thing by confronting him in front of everyone. I waited till the class was finished. I didn't do the class that night. I actually waited, and he knew something was up. And I put it on him. I said, look, you're doing this and this and this. I don't agree with it. Even though you're my coach, I have to tell you when something's up, something's up. And his response was what I thought it would be. If you don't like it,
out you go, yeah.
See ya. So there was a little group of people that he didn't know about waiting out the front because they knew I was having a conversation. And funnily enough, as I said, it had nothing to do with it. It wasn't being done to me personally, and it was financially. It wasn't being done to me personally. It was actually being done to some of those people that were waiting out the front. But because he was the black belt, they didn't want to confront him. They just, well, that's fine. That's their prerogative. But for me, I couldn't stand around and watch this.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. I shook his hand. I tried to shake his hand. He would shake my hand. I said, thank you for everything. You've taught me so much. And little does that guy know, he actually taught me how to coach. Because, as I said before, the way he went about explaining and expressing things, and the triggers on the technique that people need to really see, not just look, they really need to understand. He taught me that. And then it started a ripple effect in that team. And that team virtually just turned on its head like overnight. And we've never spoken since. Which is, you know, I've tried to say, look, Ben, I'm sorry the way it went down. I tried to be as respectful as possible, but just he didn't want anything to do with it, so that's fine. And a couple of those people are still training there, and I'm still friends with them. That's fine. It's just the way it is. And then I went to another team run by Brazilians, and for me that was different again because I started off with a Brazilian coach, and then I went to an Australian coach, and then went back to a Brazilian coach, and that was a pretty big team. So I went from being, you know, one of the leaders in a team, especially the competition side of it, to like going back to like, these guys don't even know your name. They know you from, now the funny thing is though, they know you from competition because you've actually fought a few of these people. So, but the good thing for me was I had a friend that went to the same team because he left Ben as well, went to the same team. So, and he still is a really respected guy in jiu-jitsu, super talented, and yeah, Dustin's a epic guy. So yeah, you know, I was there for about a year and a half, and I never gelled. Like it just, for some reason, it just did not gel. I competed for them. I did everything I could possible. But it just, and they were in the city, there was just something that just didn't gel.
You're either in, or you're not.
Yeah. And I think maybe that was on part of me too, because I was, as I said, I was on the inner circle in this team, chose to remove myself from it, and now I'm on the outer circle, and really, really hard to break in, you know, at any stage. Even though I competed, I won Pan Packs, I won multiple state titles with their patch on my back. I gave everything I could, you know, blood, sweat and tears. I ended up grading to purple belt under the Carlos, and great guy, really, really good guy. But as I said, it just didn't gel, you know. And then obviously the guy that you know, made a lot of problems for a lot of people was a part of that club as well. And that, yeah, when that was sort of starting to go pear-shaped again, I found myself without a home. So, and again, I chose it myself. I wasn't kicked out. I chose it myself because I didn't agree with, you know, what I was seeing. Because there was like some favourites that would, you know, just
get away with murder.
Well, no, they would get used.
Yeah, oh right.
Used,
right.
like,
yeah.
you know, just come on. It's okay to ask for a hand here and there, but I'm a big one on, you want something, you do it yourself.
Yeah.
If people around you want to go, oh, I know how to do that, I'll give you a hand with it. That's cool. But I'm not one of those people that will go, hey, I need you to help me with this now. That's not me.
Yeah.
So, and that was happening, and I thought it was only just me seeing it, but then I sort of talked to a few other people, and you know that's the way it was happening. So, you know, with that, not necessarily Carlos at all. Carlos was cool, but they also had some really, really good, you know, Brazilian guys within that team that took care of those outer guys. You know, they saw that they were trying hard, so they tried to give them as much, you know, sort of support as possible, because they couldn't reach that inner circle of Carlos and those higher graded guys. So then, yeah, I sort of just shifted from there, and then I was on my own again, and I ended up with this. As I said, this might sound like I've just skipped, but it was really just I would never change anything either. Like, the way my path went was, there's a saying in jiu-jitsu, you're a creonte. Do you know what that, you've ever heard that? Yeah. Some people call it creonchi. Creonte is, it's funny too. The Carlson Gracie Sr. came up with this name. And it's like it's like a defector.
Like a Ronin almost?
No. It's more a case of, you've turned your back on the team, you've turned your back on your family.
Yeah.
You are now a Creonte, and you'll always be tarnished as that.
Yeah.
And it was funny because the first team that I really started training with, they were the hardest of, hard.
Yeah.
And their grandmaster came up with that name. Carlson Gracie was one of those guys where he'd let you sleep on the gym floor, but if you ever left, we got problems. And it'll never go away.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because again, that's that plastering you with, you have to be loyal now that you're here. That's it for you.
Yeah.
And if you leave, then I'll tarnish you.
Yeah.
It's just only the insecure coach will do that.
Yeah.
Only the insecure coach will. My teachers always taught me that if you learn something that I don't know, learn it, come back and show me if it works. Look, put it this way, I remember I was in Thailand and my teacher, Sifu, was teaching a kata, which is like a pre-arranged pattern of moves and everything else. Anyway, he was watching the way that I do it and he's like, oh, no, that's right. And one of his right-hand people who had been with him for 20-odd years, Sensei Olivia, tiny little half Thai, half English girl, tough as nails.
Is that the lady with the long hair?
Yes.
Did you get hit by the baseball bat as well?
No. So that's Bella.
Okay.
Yeah. Equally tough. But Louie, she's even smaller.
Wow.
She's sitting there, she's getting so frustrated. I'm like, are you okay? She goes, it's not how it's done. And Sifu's going, no, this is how it's done now. And she goes, well, why? She goes, well, it works better. I just saw it. He done it. It works better. So that's how it is now. She's like, all right, I'll tell everybody around. Let me just send out some emails.
It's I was privileged to see a lot of different sides of jiu-jitsu in Australia. The good,
the bad and the
bad
ugly.
and the ugly.
You've got to see it all. You do, and I have too in my karate journey. Yeah.
I think it's important because I see guys that have been under the one coach from start to finish, and that's really cool. If you've found that person, that's super
great.
cool.
I guess it boils down to again us as parents. We've had a very turbulent childhood, but our kids aren't going to have that. That doesn't make them any less qualified.
Yeah.
But they can learn from our lessons.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with our students. Some of the black belts that I've got now, like Johnny and Roger and those guys, from white belt to black belt, all they've ever known is me and the community that I've given them to them, which is very, very broad.
Yeah.
And the same for your students. You've been able to give them a bigger community and say, learn this. They don't feel the need to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
They can if they want.
Yeah.
But they'll always find their way back home. But I guess for them, they don't want to because they're satisfied,
Jiu-jitsu is funny in Australia. Well, it's not funny. It's just, it's like it is everywhere. You've either got your people that are confident in their skills and the way they go about what they do, and then you've got the people that are probably not as confident. And those people that are not as confident are the people that close their students. They close everything.
Yeah.
Which is where that saying Creonte comes into play.
Yeah.
If you
it's
ever,
an excuse almost, isn't it?
100%. If you ever go and train anywhere else with some of these academies that I was with, you're in big trouble. You're in big trouble, and you weren't just shunned by your coach, your professor. You were shunned by the whole club.
Yeah.
And you would find yourself out pretty quick. Unless you had a bloody good reason.
Yeah.
You were shunned pretty quick. So, to me, I hated that. I could not stand that. I've always got a gi in my car. Yeah, and I've always done that. I've always got a gi in my car, and that's for the simple fact that I might be in Richmond one day, and I'm going to go and train with my friend that trains here or trains there. And I think, looking back on it, those people that that made that decision that you weren't allowed to go and train other places, they wouldn't get the same out of the students as people that were confident in their skills, knowing that the people that they've got with them can fly, and then they'll come back. You know, it's if they do find something like grass is green on the other side. Okay, that's
How many
just the way
students
it
have I
is.
had? I've been fortunate that we sort of managed to keep them here, but karate perhaps doesn't fit them. That's okay. It's all good.
Yeah,
And they've come over and migrated to BJJ or kickboxing. You know, it's all good.
Yeah.
You know, there's no shaming, and I suppose a lot of shaming goes on in BJJ.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, but it's sort of funny too, because everyone says, oh, jiu-jitsu, like you can go anywhere with jiu-jitsu. There's always jiu-jitsu, and you can rock up into any club. And no, you can't. No, you can't. Okay, yeah, you can rock up into any club if you're affiliated with that club.
Yeah.
Or you've got affiliations within that organisation. That's fine. That's fine. But it's not always looked at the same. But then you go to competitions and. You shake hands with 500 people that are, hey, how you going, man? How's training been? All that sort of stuff. But then you're not allowed to go and train at their academy with them. I never understood that. I never understood it. And it's there's no, and it's a great feeling when you walk into a club in Adelaide, and you're like, oh, I fought that guy last year. And they're all stoked to see you. They're like, yeah, man, good. Come and train. Yeah. It's a great feeling.
I've been working on that defence.
Yeah. So and you get that. You're like, oh man, what did you get me with that? And it's a good feeling to have. And that's why, and that's another big reason why I'm here too, because not once have I ever felt that it's closed door. You're here. If you're not here, see you later. It's. I had a good conversation with one of the adult students a couple of weeks ago where he travels a lot, and he wasn't sure how to approach it. He's done a lot of online searching. I said, well, that's what you don't want to do first up, mate, because that's just going to steer you in the wrong direction. And he's like, well, if I'm not here training for 3 weeks, what am I going to do? I need to keep myself active. I said, mate, jump on Google. The first thing you do is put in where you are. What are the closest academies around me? All you can do is knock on the door and say, hey, how you going? I've got a gi, I've got a belt, do you mind if I jump on the mats? I said to him, most of the time they won't even charge you for it because they're stoked just to have new people in on the mats.
Yeah.
If you're there 2 or 3 or 4 times, obviously you pay some money because they need to keep the lights on and keep their families fed as well. But, I don't know how many gyms I've gone through the world. And it's open arms. They're like, oh man, cool. And then they, everyone's waiting to see what belt comes out of the bag, and they're like, oh, purple belt, sick. That's awesome. So, that's the way I think it should be.
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely. Sort of funny, for all the travelling that I've done and all the dojos that I've been in Japan and Okinawa, never once have been shown any disrespect, ever.
Yeah.
And was always made welcome. Sure, some of the students might have smacked me around a little bit, but there was always respect at the end. It begins and ends with respect always. And it's sort of funny, as we were talking earlier, the evolution of martial arts in general. When you go back through history, some might argue with me, but we'll just use this as a reference point. You got like Kung Fu, which was one of the original organised systems of fighting. And then you got karate, which is kind of like the second or third generation. So we're kind of like, karate's not the old man of martial arts. I guess we're the middle-aged man of martial arts.
Yeah.
And then, you've got jiu-jitsu, which at the moment, I guess you could call it the cheeky teenager.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah, it's jiu-jitsu's been, I don't know what it was with jiu-jitsu. Like my brother, because I did a fair bit of judo over the years, and I like judo, but it's a young man's sport. Like
It is.
Wow. It's for my body type, it was great, but I just couldn't take the the beatings to the body and then
Yeah.
work.
That's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, like my job just didn't allow me to be able to sustain that.
I met while I was in Okinawa, I wish I could remember his name, I really do. I'm terrible with names at the best of times. But he was one of the direct descendants of one of the founders of judo.
Oh, wow.
Frail old man, 2 walking sticks.
Yeah.
And he came up, and of course my master, who's got a ton of respect in Japan, the only Westerner to ever hold a position of power in Japan.
Wow.
Called me over. He said, "Oh, Shihan, you've got to meet this gentleman." Shook his hand, and he goes, "Do you know who he is?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Oh, his name is blah blah blah. He's the direct descendant of the first judoka who invented it." And I've just gone, "Wow!" And there's this little tiny man, happy to meet me.
Yeah.
Heard about me. I don't know why. On these frail little old sticks like this. And Sifu being Sifu, and those of you who know him well, he takes the piss out of everybody. He goes, "Yeah, he's 46 years old. He's been doing judo for 40 years."
Yeah, it's even the throws and the takedowns in jiu-jitsu. There's only so much your body can sustain.
Yeah.
And especially if you get thrown wrong, you don't know how to land. That's you've seen it in the junior classes. For me, that's paramount. Before they learn anything, they learn how
to
and
fall,
they constantly learn how to fall.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily being thrown, but when that does come up, that muscle memory
It's got to be automatic, yeah. It's got to be. It's kind of funny too, because your system and my system are exactly the same. Learn how to fall first.
Yeah.
All their break falls, all their rolls, and those types of things are taught first before we teach anything else.
Yeah. Look, you and I both see the same principle being paramount is fundamentals.
Yeah.
For example, Hodger Gracie won 10 world titles with the same choke.
Yep.
Same choke. The thing was too, everyone knew it was coming, but no one could stop it because he was so good at it. Once he got the mount position, once he got that first collar, there was nothing he could do. I'm talking about the best of the best here, that there's nothing they could do. And that's just the most standard bread and butter collar choke you've ever seen. But he did it so well that it was a world beater 10 times over. And now there was nothing flash about it. There was nothing that was out of this world. But I could only imagine how many times he drilled that.
Oh yeah.
You're talking, they call it the 10,000 rule. You've got to say this is going to be 50 or 60,000 rule for this guy because, and it was the same thing. And I'm not talking just in the gold medal matches. I'm talking all the matches leading up to it. Okay, you might throw a few things in there, but 9 times out of 10, you were going to get choked with that same choke.
Yeah.
And the fundamentals are paramount.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's they're really important, and that's not only just in jiu-jitsu, karate. That's everything. At
Life.
school, life. It's really important.
Yep.
So,
Well, mate, I think we could probably go on for hours and hours, which no doubt we could. I wanted to be a record breaker today, but I've actually got another appointment to go to. So, thanks so much for making the time to come today.
That's great.
And let's do this again for sure.
Thanks very much for having me. Really enjoyed it, and we finally got it done. There
was a few false starts there, but we got there in the end.
But I really appreciate it, mate, and I love CEMA and everyone here, and it's my second home, and it will be for a long time to come.
Thanks, mate. That's awesome.
We shouldn't be doing that, but
social distancing. We've got hand sanitizer. It's all good.